Hello and welcome everyone to the rebirth, the return. The King is back. Lord of the Rings, the trilogy. It's references. We're here, folks. No, the EWA Podcast is back. I've brought it back. Gonna try and do a bi-weekly format where I sit down with you guys, members of the EWA universe, and talk to you about your past and your time here in the EWA, how you found the EWA, just get to know you in general. And we're going to do it in this video podcast format, which means you get to look at my mug and my scratched retina and cornea, whatever the hell happened right here. I thought it was pink eye. It's not, so don't worry. You're not going to get infected. Just got a scratch on here. First podcast back. I decided to sit down and talk with someone who had never been on an EWA podcast, but someone that I've worked very closely with over the last 4 or 5 weeks and got to talk and get to know before that as well. So coming on to the first returned EWA podcast, Cuz, welcome to the EWA podcast, my friend.
Hey everyone, and thanks for having me on, Craig. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and like I said, you and I are... we've worked very closely over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and we've spoken a lot. Our characters are kind of intertwined. We actually, at this last pay-per-view, both of us had 2 matches, and both of us had matches against each other. So you and I are very familiar with each other's work and very familiar with each other. So I thought you'd be a great first guest to have on. I'm excited to sit down and talk to you. There's a lot of stuff I don't know about you and a lot of stuff that I'd like to get to know about you. So let's just start. So penis length. No, I'm just kidding. Let's start with how you found the EWA. A lot of times, there's that thread on the forum that tries to get us towards the top of those EFED list and I don't know if that's how you found us or how you came about founding the EWA, and when exactly did you join the EWA?
Oh, we're talking like late August, early September last year, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So I used to EFED about 10 years ago in my teens, and there was a Reddit comment. I think there was some really shitty WWE segment, and I commented, "Well, this reads like a shitty EFED promo." And then hang on a minute, I need to go back and look at some EFEDs. So, I went to that top 100 list, and I think EWA was maybe like second, because it tends to just be first or second normally.
Yeah.
And then I picked EWA because it was a real wrestler EFED. Not a big fan of the fake wrestlers, because I think the beauty of using real wrestlers is you tend to end up with a good mix of characters. I think every EFED needs like a PCO. Every EFED needs like an Al Snow type character as well, but I think in those like fake wrestler EFEDs, you end up with just PCOs and just Al Snows, and it's a bit of a mess. Came to EWA. They looked pretty slick, the banner with the Cody Rhodes slap bang in the middle, and it started from there. I started from a Reddit comment.
I think back in the day, Bryce and I. And Bryce is someone that's not around as much anymore. But Bryce and I, we did a little recruiting on Reddit back in the day, and I think those posts, like they were up for a few hours before Squared Circle took them down. I think a couple people came in, but nothing that really stuck. But yeah, it's so weird. Like I did EFEDing in late high school, and that was almost 15 years ago now. And I ran one with some friends, and if there are probably people that haven't heard my story, and I think I Googled top EFEDs and found the EWA and joined up as Cody Rhodes, and it's so weird that this like little niche thing is still going these days. And like I've said in my feedback, like I'm always surprised when new people come up, because there can't be many, like this isn't a young man's game, I don't think, anymore. You know what I mean?
No, you don't get any kids coming in, and I think if they did, would their EFED style be different because they've grown up with a whole different era of WWE and that? I don't know if that would be a thing, more sort of sanitized role plays. But actually, I don't know if we've got anyone younger than me in the EFED. I don't know much about like Brandon and Noah and stuff. But I mean, I'm only mid-20s, so I'm probably the baby of the EFED.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. If you were 17 or 18, how would you even have your eyes open to something like an EFED? I don't remember how I found EFEDs back in the day. I think you kind of just like got lost on like the GeoCities and Angel Fire like web crawl, and then next thing you know, you're knee deep in reading just incredible role plays and stuff like that. So, I don't know how newer people would be exposed to something like that.
Yeah, like eFeds had a secondary birth because of like forums, because of like pro boards and Zeta boards and not Tapatalk, they can fuck off, but the rest, the other ones, but they got a secondary birth because I think originally it was all done over like emails and like even before that it was like postage, wasn't it? Like you'd actually send a letter to your Newt or whoever was in charge and send a written role play. But yeah, I think kids nowadays, I don't think they're spending their time on forums. That it's all on YouTube. So unless you run a YouTube eFed, I think that's the only way you're going to be able to get it done. Or a Twitch eFed. I mean, you could conceivably run a Twitch eFed.
You could. I think back in the day when EWA got its start, it was a No Mercy fed. So like results were ran through No Mercy, which greatest wrestling game of all time, obviously. But
you see, that was ahead of my time. I was too young to catch the boat on that, and I missed the Attitude Era pretty much as well because I was only about 6 or 7 when they were showing it on Channel 4 here in the UK, so I missed that out entirely. So, I mean, I'll be honest, my first proper WWE match was like a Cyber Sunday from about 2008. Evan Bourne versus Matt Hardy.
Oh, wow.
So I was a very late into wrestling, but there was a few good guys like Evan Bourne. Shoot. I need to have a drink. Sorry, mate.
You're all right. So you find the EWA, you join up late August, early September, kind of get yourself acclimated and jump right in. Whenever you joined up as Gabriel. What was your reasoning for picking him and using him? Was that someone that you had a history with, or is he like one of your favorite guys, or what was the deal with that choice?
So when I started watching wrestling, I almost exclusively watched the rebooted ECW. I had a real soft spot for that over Raw and SmackDown because, I guess in a way why people watch NXT nowadays, you get you get to see new guys first, and it almost had its own little ecosystem where they all fight amongst each other, and you got to have a bit more character time. Like I think there were guys like Zack Ryder and Sheamus when he started out, but there was this goofy idiot called DJ Gabriel who happened to be English. So I was as much of a fan of DJ Gabriel could have been back then because he didn't really win a whole lot. But
right.
I wanted to pick a guy who had a blank slate in the EWA, wouldn't have been picked by anyone. And I think DJ Gabriel is a guy who is so obscure, he doesn't even show up on have you forgotten about these guys like Bam Neely and some not Tito Ortiz, the other Ortiz, Ricky Ortiz.
Oh, I thought you said Tito Santana. I thought you were going old school on me.
Ooh, no. I mean, people have heard of him, but DJ Gabriel, he's just a footnote of a footnote of a footnote. So I was like, yeah, take this guy. And I mean, I merged him a little bit with what was going on in my life at the time. I'd just lost my job, and I trained for a few years to be in this job. And I kind of did a little parallel where Gabriel, trained for years to be a wrestler, lost his job, and then spent a long time outside and was trying to work his way back in. So I was kind of using a little bit of the whole Josh side of things. I think Josh said he likes to use his own experiences and his own feelings in his role plays. So that helped a lot with starting out. And now I'm getting to the interesting part where Gabriel is going to have a bit of a tumultuous time of things. So, yeah.
So when you joined the EWA, you kind of threw yourself in. You found actually a measure of success early on, main eventing the Sin City Survival pay-per-view with the multi-person tag match. Actually, one of the 2 survivors in that match as well. So, you came in like a house of fire and did really great things right off the bat, and then you kind of pressed up against that, not the glass ceiling, but maybe more so like a brick wall for a few months, and just had a hard time cresting after that. Talk about your frustrations early on with having that measure of success in this highly competitive EFED like it is, and then like trying to get over that hump through late October and into King of the Ring time?
Yeah, it was tricky. It was my first big exposure of being in a big situation in the Fed, and then my first big sort of crushing defeat. But I didn't feel any sort of, oh shit, I lost. Like, fuck it, I'm leaving the Fed.
Right.
I never felt that once. I think this E-Fed is something special, and the reason it does so well, I think, is because it strikes a really good balance between really competitive handlers who are really good at writing with the really laid back atmosphere that you've got. Like, you've got a shout box, we're all just talking absolute crap at each other, and it's a really nice EFED to be in, just because you get to really push yourself, but know that you're not going to have anyone who's really ultra competitive who's going to kick up a fuss if you lose or win. I mean, like, the closest you ever get is like literally me when I messaged you and John saying I actually felt sorry for beating Strowman and Morella so short into your reign. Like, you actually feel bad for your opposition as well, because everyone here is genuinely nice people. So I think with Gabriel it wasn't too tricky to pick myself up either, because I'd made his aim for a while, the King of the Ring, but it actually made it trickier when I lost King of the Ring, because that would have been almost all of Gabriel's character was becoming King of the Ring, which is what I just mentioned to Walter actually in his feedback, that don't make it your whole character all about King of the Ring, which I don't think he is actually, in all fairness, because if you lose it, you're kind of just hanging out, you're lost in space, just floating around doing nothing. So it was like a baptism of fire, but it kind of showed me that the Fed was worth hanging around in, I think.
And then you got thrown right into Super Brawl season. Obviously, your first Super Brawl experience. You're on Team Good Boys with Lou and the Kings of Wrestling. I don't think there's a whole lot of Super Brawl experience. Steve was the one bringing it in with Christian, but I don't know how much he was involved with the planning and the process itself. Talk about just your Super Brawl experience as a whole and being on that team.
I didn't have the best of experiences, and it wasn't because of the team. It was just because of real life, coming back to bite you in the arse. And I'd spent months pretty much saying how, I hope it's not over Christmas. I hope it's not over Christmas. And then I got to it and I thought, hang on a minute, actually this would have been easier if it had been over Christmas. So I think I'd sort of jinxed myself a little bit.
Yeah, that wound up becoming like a huge thing too, because we all kind of agreed, like, let's not do it over Christmas. And then we pushed it up to the week before, and only, again, it's tough for John and I to like do these podcasts and sit here on like this throne or whatever and be like, only one team got all their role plays in on time by the original deadline. Like, we had to bust our ass to do that though. Like, we were late nights, early mornings. Like, I was writing role plays, finishing up group role plays at like 6 a.m. with Brett. And so I think even with it being like earlier, I think it wound up being a more painful process. I think it's something we can look at in the future, and I think we will look at in the future if we remember this time next year. But yeah, my story, and again, I've told this on previous podcasts, but we probably have a lot of new listeners, is I remember captaining a Super Brawl team, and the deadline was Christmas Eve, and I remember sitting in my parents' back room on their computer, like finishing up the group role play, and my mom's like, she's like, all right, we're going to open presents soon. And I'm like, give me like 10 minutes. Like, I have to finish this thing. And she's like, what? I'm like, I've got to finish this, like 10 minutes. She's like, it's Christmas Eve. I'm like, I know, but like, my team's counting on me, and I got to type this out and do this. So, those of us who have been here for a while have been in those situations. But yeah, it's tough. Like, even that week before, it was hectic around Super Bowl time,
Yeah. I mean, I just had a hectic time. I picked up some work, and I was having like an absolute bitch of a commute to it every morning and every evening. Yeah. So by the time I came back from work, I was absolutely just dead tired. So it was a bit of a struggle, but I think the person who really saved it was Lou, who he was a hell of a captain. Like, he did a metric crap ton of research to make sure we were all kind of with it. I think he'd been speaking to, I don't know if he'd been speaking to John or to Newt or somebody, but I think he'd read loads of previous Super Brawls and their role plays, and he had a really good strategy for approaching it.
Mhm.
And I think it shows with how well he's doing with PCO right now is that he is meticulous, and he clearly does his research on people, and he is a really hard worker, but he was a good captain. So what was I going to say? I think what bit us in the backside a little bit was the fact that Lou was still going after the national championship. Because we were in a very unique situation where he had just won King of the Ring as a whole other character.
Yeah.
And then he was also with a different character, the captain. So I don't think Newt would ever have allowed him to win Super Brawl as world champion to then fight himself at the collision course or whatever it's called. And then so I think we probably weren't in line to win. I think I don't know if it's ever happened before with the captain not going for the world championship.
I think so.
Oh, okay. Well,
I think it's
I
happened
don't
once
think
or twice, but I can't like I feel like it's something that has happened, but I can't remember specifically.
I couldn't see a situation where Newt would have gone, yeah, they're the winners. I don't think Gabriel's roleplay was strong enough to win as non-captain, I guess. And I think, yeah, PCO and Ken Shamrock were just all round a lot stronger. So I think Lou did the best of what was a really sort of unique situation. And he was a really good captain. And Jared and Chris Hero's handler were really good teammates as well. And I think Jared picked up a lot of my slack because I had to drop the ball basically in terms of the group role play. So I tip my hat to all three of them. They were really good teammates, and I can only wish that I had a bit more time in my hands. We might have been able to win the whole thing.
I think the toughest thing around Super Brawl is the group role play, and it's not a matter of getting it done, because as long as you have good teammates, it's rather simple. It's, you know, EWA's been around forever. Like, we're on our who knows what iteration of Super Brawl. As far as group role plays go, like, they've all been done, you know? And It was kind of weird. Like, this year was like, it almost had like a theme of like transportation, you know, like the group role plays, because we were talking in our group and we were like, let's like put our team on a plane, because, you know, we looked back and that had never been done. So like, let's put everyone on the plane and then make like this volatile situation and overcome it and all that stuff. And then like, we put our team on a plane. Lesnar's group role play was on a plane. You guys were traveling cross country in a car, or, you know, a van, and then like Big Show and Patrick and their team like saved somebody from a car crash and then drove around in a car too. And we're like, holy shit! Like, all of these, Super Bowl group role plays are just about traveling this year. So if a team had just put themselves on a train, or maybe you know, some other like chariot or something, maybe that would have been good too. But yeah, whenever
a time machine.
Yeah, a time machine. But whenever we were reading the other group role plays, we were like, oh god, like everyone is doing something like this. You know.
Well, I think Lou had two big ideas going in, and one was driving there in a beaten old up van, which no one has ever done. And I think the other, which I only put forward really as a callback to his own role plays, was in a record store. And I can only wish we'd done the record store, but wasn't to be. So
it's so, like I said, it's so tough coming up with like an idea, and really, it's tough coming up with ideas for personal role plays. You know, people talk about wanting, or not talk about, but people ask for feedback, and really, the only feedback I can give is you have to put your character in real life situations, and I think the best role plays are the ones that take those real life situations and turn them into shit talking. Like, if you can take Marty Skrull going to the grocery store and turn that into a shit talking role play on Gabriel, like, that's gonna be better than any more outlandish situation that you can put yourself in, you know.
Yeah, I think we all saw the saw the power of Key's Born on the Bayou roleplay.
Mm-hmm.
That he could turn just the most banal sort of situation into gold. And I try and strike a fine line between taking a scenario and using it as an analogy. I think for King of the Ring, I had Gabriel on the London Underground, and I tried not to be too heavy-handed with the whole, I'm reaching the end of the journey, or making a few stops, or the doors are shut, or I don't know how you turn that into an analogy, but I try to be not too heavy-handed with that, but I think almost the more boring the situation, the better, because it just makes the dialogue stand out that much more. I think there are obviously limits to what you can say on a park bench or, walking the dog or something, but I think it's a good approach, especially when so many people like me focus too much on the environmental descriptions and things.
I mean, everybody has their own style and, again, stories from the past that I'll relive. With Cody, I was kind of just straightforward, like to talk shit a lot, put him in these weird situations. I had him as like a failed actor that was filming the Justice League movie long before the Justice League movie was ever made, and stupid, like he appeared in like a Walking Dead episode, shit like that. And then I faced CM Punk, who was controlled by TZ, and TZ had these long introductions, and they painted a picture, and they gave you a history of that area, and they told you why Punk was there and what he was going through. And I faced TZ for 2 months, and I just remember he was probably the most inspiring person that I've had here in the EWA as far as shaping my role plays. And it really took me to another level. And while I lost both matches against TZ and Punk, I came out of that a much better writer. And I feel like that 2-month span, I went from like my role plays being like a 5 or 6 out of 10 to like an 8 or 9, because I just changed the way I did it. Like I ended up telling a story instead of just saying shit, which is how a lot of my role plays were early on. And I think we're seeing that with some of the people here. Like it's tough because people can ask for feedback, but they have to listen, and they have to actually you can learn a lot from reading other people's stuff. And I like reading other people's stuff. I wish I had more time to do it. There are just so many words put out in the EWA every week, and it's tough to read them all. But I try my damnedest, and if somebody asks for feedback, I usually personally try and give that person that feedback too. So,
and I think there are people here who are really good at feedback, both receiving it and dishing it out. I think the main one, or the one that at least got me started, was Josh. He came to me a lot. I mean, we kind of started at the same time, but he beat me in my debut as Dolph Ziggler. But in the sort of weeks after, I guess he used Gabriel a little bit as a starting point for Finlay, and we kind of shared ideas and but it was good in a way because it allowed me to look at my own writing and what was good in my writing and what wasn't, and what advice could I give Josh. And now I look at Josh's role plays, and they're like a much better version of mine. And it's annoying, but he's a really talented writer, and he's obviously got all the real life wrestling experience to come off of. But there's some really good. I'm not very good at giving feedback, I find, but there's some really good feedback givers here in the EWA.
Talk about guys like you and Josh, and we'll throw Jared in there as well. That was in the Year in Review podcast. The EWA has been around for a long time. A lot of us here have been here for a long time. When you came in, did you feel like there was an old guard type like group, or like did you feel intimidated at all by the people that were here? Like the people that there's a core group that usually likes to work together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think when I started, the old guard was quite a small group by that point. I think it was like an old army battalion they'd almost all been killed off, but there was just 2 or 3 stragglers like remaining. I remember, I think John was very visible on the board. I think Dylan as well. I quickly learned who this guy Craig was, some guy.
Unfortunately.
And well, I I got confused at first with like who handled who and like who used to handle people, and I think I mixed up with somebody else. I talked about the House of H as if it was Dylan's idea or something, something like that. And
you were like Brett. I think you gave Brett credit, and I was like, "You son of a bitch."
That was not that was the just the first of many cock-ups in my EWA career. But yeah, like I knew there was an old guard of sorts. I think people talked up Newt like he was some mythical creature. And,
I mean, he pretty much is. Like
he pretty much is.
Yeah.
He's a unicorn in the EWA, but then there's guys like Brett who I didn't realise were part of an old guard. So I guess it was easier to tell with others, but it wasn't off-putting. Like I think a big part of why I stayed in the EWA, not just coming to the EWA, was the fact there was a lot of history. I mean, it says it in the banner that for over 14 years, which is horrendously out of date now. There is a lot of history, and when you win something, you feel like you're making a mark on a place that has been around for a long time. And I think that means a lot more than in most EFEDs where, I mean, like one of the first EFEDs I was on as a teenager, I won the World Championship in about 2 or 3 months as Nigel McGuinness. And it kind of felt like I didn't even get a pat on the back. Like there was no feedback threads. It was all kind of just people asking for matches next week. And it felt like I hadn't really achieved anything. I'd won it so quickly in an EFED that'd been around for like maybe a year. So I think that's a huge thing as well, is that there's just so much history. So the old guard is a part of it, I guess, and it wasn't off-putting because John was very friendly. Dylan was kind of weird, but I like it, and
he still is.
He still is, bless him. And then and then I don't remember talking to you very much initially, but I mean I quickly got to know you. So it wasn't off-putting at all, and it's obvious that it doesn't put off most other people. We kept people like Brandon and Noah and Josh and Jared and people around. I mean, we lost a few people who make debuts. I think we had an Usos for a week, and
that's just the EWA.
And that Mustafa Ali we had for a week went, and there was that guy George. But it clearly doesn't put off any people, and I think it's a big part of why you actually retain most of your members, I guess.
I mean, that's good. Obviously, we're not looking to run anyone off, especially if they're quality people and good writers. The stuff like the podcast and feedback threads have brought the community together, and we know each other. We're friends on Facebook, follow each other on Twitter, and we do these monthly and weekly podcasts and whatever and stuff like that. So there is a sense of like these aren't just people that we're working with, and that's what you were talking about and that's what is tough around here sometimes is when you win a big match and you beat someone that you respect and you're just like, yes, and then you're like, but no, I hate it for that person. Yeah.
No, I just I was a huge fan of your work as Strowman. Just the little dynamic you had with Santino was great, and it took you 2 attempts to get the belts off the Kings of Wrestling. Then you came through Super Brawl, and then it felt like when I won the women's championship off Jeanne as Dominatrix, like he had done such great work for such a long time as Dominatrix, and then I sort of swooped in and took the title straight off him. And I felt bad then, and I felt bad now for you and John. And like you do genuinely feel bad for people when you beat him. Like when I beat Josh at King of the Ring, I felt bad for him because I felt his role plays were better than mine in that semi-final. And then at the same time I lost to Lou as PCO, who I can't remember if I got a message back from him, but there was such good sort of camaraderie between everyone. But can I also just say that I think things like the podcasts and things like JR's mailbag and roundup and whatever, they are a huge part too of what keeps people retained. I think you need stuff to wrap around the EFED to make it all feel like it all matters. And I think with this podcast back as well, I think there'll be hopefully more people coming in, more people staying.
Yeah, and I think this is, I understand that this podcast is a great tool to get people out there and make people real. And, I think it's important for us to know people's motivations and how they got here and why they're so interested in doing this and why they like being here. I think that's a big part of it. Do you think that you make EWA too much of a priority, not enough of a priority, or it's kind of just right as far as priorities in your life right now?
I think everyone makes it the priority they want it to be. I think some will put in more work than others. Like, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I spent about a week just doing Photoshops, and
Right.
and that was the output I wanted to do that week for the EWA. Like, I feel like the only weeks I do give it too much time is pay-per-view weeks, and I think that's fair enough. I feel like I give over maybe more of my spare time than I should, but like, it's my hobby. Like, I talk to my partner about it. I've mentioned it even to my family, just, I'm doing some writing this week or whatever, and I think my partner said she quite likes this being one of my hobbies compared to, like, I don't know what else you could be doing, but it's a really nice hobby to have, and I give it as much time as I can. And there's been weeks when I haven't been able to give it the time I wanted to, so it's just finding that balance and not giving up your whole life to it, I guess.
Do you take the EWA and stuff that happens in it and results too seriously? Or more seriously than you should?
I think the one time I felt properly disappointed was when the Vaudevillains lost their first attempt at the tag titles against the Kings of Wrestling, and it wasn't anything against Jared or Chris Hero's handler, but it was just, I had triple booked myself that week, and I think the one I put the most effort into was probably the Vaudevillains, because it was a championship and it was a chance to win a championship. And in the end, Gabriel came close to winning that main event. Blue Pantaloons won the women's championship anyway, but I wasn't expecting that one because Dominatrix has been on such a roll. And then the tag titles came along, and I thought that was the one I had the best chance of making an impact on. I think more often than not, I just sort of roll with the punches. Like, when I lost King of the Ring, I was fine with it. Like, it was a bit of an annoying thing to happen, but it's part of the EFED. You're not going to win maybe 75% of the big time events you go for. Like,
it's just tough to win. Yeah.
I think you mentioned once before, like, there was a time as Cody Rhodes, you lost the title to Adam Cole maybe like 2 weeks before Super Brawl.
Yeah.
And those have got to really hurt. But there hasn't been a point where I've gone, right, I'm leaving the EFED because I lost to Al Snow at Super Brawl or whatever. Like, that's not a thing I would do. It's a lot of fun to be here, and it's in a way, it's a big part of my life now, just as a game, I guess.
Yeah. There have definitely been times where I've had to take a break. I don't think I've ever sworn off the EWA for good or forever and then come back, but there are times where you just get burnt out, and the easiest time to get burnt out is after a huge loss and just being like, okay, I'm going to take a break for now. And, whenever I lost Adam Cole, I lost my Super Bowl captain spot. I lost the team I had drafted, and I got slid into the national title slot on Tajiri's team. And if there was ever a time to take a break, that was probably it. But I was never.
Just in case anyone does get burnt out, I'll tell you what I did with the Vaudevillains when I did lose to the Kings of Wrestling. I unintentionally almost gave myself a 3-step plan to stop myself from getting like really pissed off and leave. Like, I think the next week I decided to put over Strowman and Morella.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we were discussing originally a triple threat tag match, and I was like, no, I just want to give the Vaudevillains a break for a few weeks. So I put you and John over on the way out, and then a few weeks down the line, I thought, I know what I need to do with these guys. I need to, make them the comedy act they should be. And I decided to have a little program with Dylan, sort of very light-hearted, just a bit of fun, and it did the job. And then they were right back. I mean, I know I lost to the PWO at Super Brawl, but then I was raring with them to go in January, and took the titles off you and John, annoyingly. But Yeah, I'd say if you do ever get burnt out, do give yourself a break for a week or two, but just think of ways you can bring back your characters as maybe something slightly different. I mean, I know I've got at least 2 gimmick changes for the Vaude villains in my back pocket in case I get fed up of the old-timey crap. I've got some what should be interesting changes of character, so I think you do need that as well, just in case. And I mean, I've got other characters lined up to take up when I run out of steam with Gabriel or the Vaude villains, so I can't see myself leaving for a while yet.
And speaking of interesting changes of characters, obviously you've gone through this transformation recently with Gabriel picking up the loss last week at Collision Course to Marty Scurll, now joining the Horde. Talk about just the process of getting to this point over the last 3 or 4 weeks with the Horde and Marty.
So, I think you and I were always going to be working together post Super Brawl.
Yeah.
And
that was the plan, pretty much. Yeah,
that was
no
the
matter
plan. Yeah, whatever the case, and all I knew is that Gabriel needed a big time feud, or just something to happen to him, because basically, I realised that all of Gabriel's output has been him punching up at that glass ceiling and not really interacting with other people as much as he should have been. Like, it was very much Gabriel, almost every segment with Gabriel was on his own, to a degree. It was him saying, I'm going to win this, and I'm going to win this, and I'm going to win that as well. Watch out for that. And then I just realised he hadn't really had a proper feud, and you really need those feuds to see any sort of character change, any sort of development. You need that for future role plays where you talk about your history with somebody. I mean, if you just look at Walter's roleplay, I'll use that as an example again because I think I just gave him feedback. He beat Ken Shamrock the other week, I think.
PCO.
He beat PCO. Oh,
yeah.
Well, mixed up there. Yeah, of course he didn't beat the champ. That would have been
weird.
Too much better. That would have been great, but he beat PCO. He beat Finn Balor, and with his little King of the Ring storyline he's got going, he's beaten the last 2 Kings of the Ring, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got a huge advantage with his little storyline he's playing at. But Gabriel was kind of just, I'm gonna win King of the Ring now. See ya. I'm gonna win Super Brawl, hopefully. See ya. So yeah, I just needed a story. I need something that I could respond with in like future role plays and just see Gabriel run the line with some dastardly heel. And Mighty Skull was that man, and I think what we've come up with for the near future is some really good stuff. And Gabriel is going to be tested in the next little while, and it's really exciting stuff just to see that character make a change. Because I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I based a little bit of his debut and his debut character on myself, but I've got to a point now where I want to make him Gabriel rather than just Cuz the wrestler.
Yeah,
so.
I hear you. And I think non-title feuds are a big underutilized thing in the EWA. Definitely. And obviously going after the title is a natural feud that you can build from, but it's trying to build genuine animosity between 2 people that I think is the toughest thing to do. Anyone can feud over a belt, to be honest, but it's exponentially tougher to come up with the reason this guy hates this guy, but why did these 2 guys hate each other? And I think we did a good job with that, and I think we told a story that was like what we wanted to tell, which is a rarity as well when a lot of these results are not predetermined like real wrestling. So I'm excited. I'm happy that things are going well. I like the group that we have in the Horde. I've been very blessed with the turnout and the reach out that I've had from people, and I really this is not what I ever envisioned for Marty when I started this, or even whenever I put out the flyers on the first slam. But it has been a lot of fun, and I am enjoying it, and I'm excited to see where it goes with Marty. So, I'm glad you're enjoying it. But yeah, the characters interacting in a non-title way, I think that's what builds your character. So
Yeah, like I think just look at what Ken Shamrock did last year with Trevor Mann. I mean,
exactly.
I know Trevor Mann ran out of steam towards the end of the year for Jared, but um, Ken basically built his entire stab at Super Brawl and at Brock Lesnar off a 3 or 4 month feud with Trevor Mann. That I think it started off as a feud with them and Bobby Lashley, and then it became a really sort of blood feud between the two of them, which then led to the Double Jeopardy title situation where they fought again. So it was just that there was not really a lot of one-on-one non-title feuds back then. I think it stood out, and I think now everyone's sort of trying to get into feuds, which is really good. But
factions are the new hotness, man.
Factions are the new thing. Which is just in time for the Horde to come in. We've got the Kingdom, and there's like girl factions as well.
And then OVE is basically a faction at this point.
The Vaudevillains is technically a faction.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't really use Jervis as much as I should, but I mean, factions are so hot right now, and
it's so hot.
So
so you haven't had a chance to work with a lot of people. Obviously, you've worked with me, and you've worked with the Kings of Wrestling in the past with the Vaudevillains. Who are some writers or some characters that you'd like to work with, whether it be in the near future or sometime this year?
OVE for the Vaudevillains. I'm not working with them right now, and I'm sort of just figuring out what direction to take the new champs in. OVE, I think, for the Vaudevillains, I think with how I'm playing the Vaudevillains right now, they need a anarchic, ultra-violent trio to compete with what is basically a trio plus Blue Pantaloons. So I think that'd be perfect for them. I mean, as for Gabriel, I guess working with Josh, Josh couldn't do it at the time, but I wanted to do a Gabriel Finley feud that was based off respect. It was based off sort of one-upping each other, and it was going to be a little bit like almost like mentor versus protege type storyline. So, but the thing is, Gabriel didn't really have a lot of character to him other than sort of slightly plucky tweener.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard more to sort of pick out who would be good to feud with. So I think Marty was the perfect guy to feud with and still is for Gabriel. And it'll be interesting to see who Gabriel feuds with in the coming months while he's a member of the Horde. So
yeah, feuding around Civil War time always difficult, but Civil War, my personal favorite match of the year, obviously Super Bowl is a huge match, but Civil War, just the Royal Rumble as a whole, just a fun time. So, do
you have any tips for all the new guys who are going to be having their first stab at Civil War?
No, I don't, man. I remember I won Civil War as Cody Rhodes a couple years ago, and there was a thread. I believe we used to do predictions back in the day, like predictions threads like you saw for the last pay-per-view, and they had like 9 or 10 replies, and I just remember Cody's name not appearing once in anyone's like list. And I didn't even take it as a slight because like I knew my work was good that week, but I had never really put Cody on the radar. Like I was just kind of like, I took a match here and there, and I was like, all right, Civil War, I'm going to do this. And I just had a really good story, and it was just a story about Cody's redemption and coming back. And I remember reading it, and Cody came into the match, and I was like, okay, yeah. And then he was in like the final 2, and I was just like, my palms were sweaty reading it and stuff. And I remember winning, and I was just like, holy shit. And then everyone in like the feedback was like, why didn't we think of Cody? Like, obviously, he's, just like, nobody said Cody as a person who could win this. And I was like, yeah, like I didn't even really think myself as an actual contender to win this match. So I think,
having been here a few years, is it often like won by a rank outsider, or is it just won by someone who's not sure how to approach that?
It has its history where, like surprise guys do show up and win, and I think that's harder to do. Like your stuff has to be really good, but I think being active and going into it knowing that you're active and really trying is what's going to be your best option. Storytelling is key. You really want to have a good story arc going into the week. You know, your goal isn't to talk shit on every single person that's in, where it's like, Gabriel sucks because of this, Marty Skrull sucks because of this, Walter sucks because of this, Fit Finlay sucks. Like, you don't, that's not what you want to do. You really want to
about yourself.
Yeah, you really want to tell. This is the week where you have an opportunity to tell like a great story, and you can do it in the annals of not having to work around a specific opponent, or a lesson to be learned that you can take into a one-on-one match. This is your chance to, you know, do something different and really push yourself, and you know, put your character in a situation that they haven't been in before. So
can I call an unlikely winner right now?
You can.
John Cena.
John Cena, yeah.
I think Patrick does some really strong character work that's pretty much solo. I think when I came in, he was doing work basically with himself, feuding with himself, and it was good stuff. And I think he will be one to watch if, as you say, is true. It's strong character work on the day, and I think he will be someone to watch. Maybe a Cody Rhodes type who everyone goes, damn it, why didn't we think of Patrick and John Cena?
Yeah, and I think the heel turn for Cena is what's going to be best for him too, because that will allow him to not be pigeonholed by the real life John Cena face character, which I think he was. And I think that, you know, him doing heel work with John will allow him to venture into actual character development even more with him. So
definitely.
I'm interested to see that. But with all the good stuff going on in the EWA, there are a few things that are not so good about the EWA. A longtime staple of the podcast making its comeback, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for Penis in Uranus. And while I don't have the great intro that Penis in Uranus used to have, I do have some nice background music for it, as you can hear. Penis in Uranus, give me something, cuz, from the EWA that you are not a fan of, something that annoys you, something that bothers you, could be anything. Don't hold back, let loose. Make it personal if you got to. What is something in the EWA that is a penis in Uranus?
Man. I should have been thinking about this for the last 45 minutes.
I know, because I told you before the podcast started that this was going to happen.
You told me this was coming, and I've desperately been thinking, what don't I like? I mean, I pretty much love... You
want me to go first? I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, here's something from the EWA that I don't like, and it is completely forum-based, okay? Let me tell you what I don't like. I don't like when you share or work on a segment or a role play with someone in a private message, and then every time you go back to that private message, you have to scroll past the 95 feet of that role play or segment to get to the bottom of the screen. And then, like, you're scrolling around trying to find stuff that was said, and there's just, like, this giant role play right in that. Like, just start a new message thread. Like, Cuz and I have, like, there's, like, 5 pages, and I'm just like, please, like, just start a new message thread. But I'm like, no, he doesn't want to start a new one. I'll keep going with this. John and I just stopped with John. When we were doing the tag team stuff with segments and role plays, I was like, every time I was just like, here's a new thread, John. Like, I don't want to scroll past like 9 role plays in this message thread. And I know, there's an arrow at the bottom. And I don't know if you guys use the EWA on mobile, but the forum is very different on mobile than it is on desktop. There's no shout box on mobile unless you click the button at the bottom that takes you to the desktop site. But anyways, yeah, scrolling through it on mobile is like even worse. Even though there's an arrow at the bottom of the mobile page that takes you back to the top, it just annoys me. It just annoys me to open up the private message chain and see like 9,000 words, and then you have like you send somebody a role play or like, you know, a segment with someone, and then right below it they're just like, looks good, dude. And then the next time you go in, it's like, looks good. I'm like, oh my god, I just sent you like 9,000 words. Like, but I do it too, so they're like, how's this? Like, I'm like, looks fine, dude. Didn't scroll through all this shit from here on. I can only apologize, but I'm just looking at my messages. I've literally got so many that are just segment. I know, yeah. With occasional like, congrats. Like, I got one from Charles back in December that was congratulating me for getting a Super Brawl draft and stuff, and like I've got so many like one reply podcast message from Snowman and things like, yeah, they would stack up, and I know 5 pages, and
near 70 message personal message chains might be a bit excessive, but
we're gonna start a new one,
cuz
between us, okay?
Yeah,
starting today, we're gonna start a new one.
Okay.
All right, now it's time for your penis and your anus. Can be anything EWA related, like in the annals of the EWA or on the forum, whatever. What is your penis and your anus, cuz?
I guess like it can be finding contenders for championships, or alternatively, guys being too afraid to step up and wanting to become the next contender. I guess like, I'm looking forward to Civil War, but finding a new contender to the tag team championships post Strowman and Morella is tricky, I think, and there's not like an immediate. There's almost no tag team going, oh, I'd like to be the next contender. So it's pretty much just you going up to guys going, oh, by the way, would you like to be the next guy? And I think it's almost the polar opposite. Well, no, it's not polar opposite. It's completely the same to what was happening with Key, where nobody was stepping up to Brock Lesnar, and he was kind of just fighting random schmoes like Chris Jericho through Beat the Clock and stuff. And yeah, I guess the nature of the board means it is quite tricky to start a storyline like that unless you've got someone already in mind who is also not doing anything. And I think that could be quite tricky. And I think in a way, the new style of Slam, the way it's like set out, could be a little bit tricky with maybe having surprises. Like, say for instance you're in a feud with someone and one half of that feud's asked for a segment, like you can almost certainly guarantee the other half's going to be in that segment as well as like a interruption or whatever. So I know Newt's doing that to make it easier on himself and make it easier just to book around it, but it kind of almost a little bit of a drawback in terms of it might lessen any surprises that come along. But I haven't really got any dramatic penis in the anus with the Fed. Like I think it's working like clockwork right now. The slams have been really high quality the last few weeks, and Collision Course was great, which I can say quite easily because I won Collision Course. But helps. Like it does help. I think we're thinking how the pay-per-view went. But like maybe another thing else is I think the nature of how we're booking Slam now means that feedback has taken a bit of a backseat. Yeah,
that was actually going to be my next thing. Is I think like how we book this, how we book Slam actually stifles feedback these days. But I think people are racing like sharks to blood in the water to get their segments and their matches in. Mostly segments. Like people aren't fighting over matches so much. But yeah, I think we need to get back to reading the shows and leaving feedback, because there is a ton of work that is being put into these shows, and I think Newt deserves the feedback on those shows and on the matches and stuff that he writes.
Yeah, like I mean, there's been some decent feedback in that in the Collision Course and Slam booking thread. Like you left some neat little feedback to Patrick and just generally about yourself and me. And Jay White left some good feedback, and then I left a great big monolithic post of some feedback, and then
no one read that.
Nothing, and then I think Abby and Jared liked it. But,
they just like how long it was.
They just like how long it was. They didn't actually read. But yeah. You got 2 whole pages of people going, oh, I'd like a segment, I'd like a segment, I'd like a segment, or a squash match, because no one's actually wants a match anymore. It's all squash matches and segments. So I guess like Newt will figure it out, and I think the slams are better as a result, and I think he is turning those squash match requests into actual matches, which I think is for the best. Like you should only really use squash matches if you're brand new, ideally. But yeah, like I think it has a few issues to it. It's got a few kinks that need ironing out, but the slams the last few weeks have been of a really high quality, so I don't think that's in question.
Agreed. I'm trying to think if there's really anything else. Oh, I was going to respond to finding challengers. I think a lot of people in the EWA are of the mentality of, I need to earn a shot and not just be given one. So it's hard when you're the champion and just be like, hey, hey, I got a title shot over here. You want one of these? You know, like, and people are just like, I didn't really earn it. You know, I just like did like 2 squash matches last month. But people need to like take advantage of that though. Like, people should be reaching out and being like, hey, like, what's your plan? Like, are you going again with Strowman and Morella, or are you going like towards this, or you know, like where do we fit into this? I think you have to be aggressive. And while there are things like King of the Ring and Civil War and other stuff like that that help name a number 1 contender, and there's no denying that. Like, this is the end all be all. When you start racking up wins and building momentum and, you know, make your character good, like, I think, you know, you should be reaching out to Josh and being like, hey, I know you just beat Frank Shamrock. What's your plans with the national title? I'd kind of like to get my foot in the door here, and with the tag title. And, you know, obviously it's tougher with the world title, but your character is not going to get seen just by taking random matches and winning random matches over and over. Like, you have to do something with them. So I think people think they have to earn their shot, but sometimes you just got to take it, you know?
Yeah, like, I mean, it's hard, I think, for the champions as well. And I know some people ragged on Key a little bit for people not getting opportunities, but I think it goes both ways. Like, the champions themselves don't feel totally sure what direction to take their championship in. Like, in the end, I went to Key, not to Key. I didn't ask Key anything. I went to Newt and I said, right, what should I do next? And he sort of said, you know, find someone, basically. I wanted to do a tournament, but it's really too soon since King of the Ring, and obviously with Civil War, the build-up's not too far away, Civil War, so you haven't really got time to do anything like that. But if anything, it meant there's plenty of contenders. It's just finding someone who has earned it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I did find someone in the end, and we will find out very soon who it shall be. But
I think whenever I had my long national title reign, I lost to Eddie Kingston at the pay-per-view in May, or a Slam in May, and right at like the day I lost the belt, I turned around and messaged TZ and I was like, hey, I don't know what you're doing, because he didn't really have anyone. I was like, I know I just lost the national title and it doesn't look good, but like I want to take my shot, like, because TZ was somebody I'd wanted to work with for a long time. So even coming off the heels of losing, and I'm not saying like Frank Shamrock should take on his brother, you know, but like I lost the national title, and the very first thing I did was reach out to TZ and be like, hey, I just had this super long reign, like 154 days. Like, I feel like, you know, I want to push myself to be better. And while I could face Eddie Kingston again, I'd rather push myself against you. And I lost twice, and, you know, lessons learned, but...
But in all fairness, like, a national championship run should be like your audition for being world champion anyway, and then, especially with a 100+ day reign, like, that is pretty much your, I lost it in that scenario, but, you know, I'd like to be world champion. I mean, Brock Lesnar held it, Santino held it, and probably should have been world champion at some point, and I'm sure John might try again down the line with Santino, but like, that is your audition, and I would have bought Cody Rhodes as world champion straight, even if he did lose the national championship. So, like, I think people just need to be a bit pushier and go, I'd like to have a little program with you.
It's tough to program yourself to be selfish and be like, I want a title shot. Like, well, what'd you do? Like, well, I beat this guy over here. Like, well, he no-showed. And like, well, I still beat him. Like, you know, just sometimes you just got to take your shot, man. And, you know, I think that there are like 7 or 8 really good writers and characters. Like, you know, I've had this list going over here of like the top guys, and if you take a look at like any of the top 8, like, I wouldn't be upset if anyone in that top 8 got a world title shot. I think John Cena is number 8, and I could make an argument where I'm like, Cena versus Shamrock, yeah, I can sell this, let's go, you know. So it is what it is. That's it. That's a good painus in Uranus. Like, sometimes people just, like, it started with, it's tough to find title contenders, when really the painus in Uranus is people just need to be more selfish and take their shots, you know.
The EWA is genuinely too nice, and it goes,
I know, right?
It goes right back to me feeling sorry for you and John for taking your titles. Like, it is all connected, and
I think sometimes Newt wishes it was more cutthroat. Like, I think he gets tired of like everyone putting their arms around each other, and it's just like, it's all right, dude, good job. Where I think he wants people to be mad, but like not at him, you know. Like, he's like, he would rather John and I be pissed at you and be like, we want our fucking belts back, but instead we're just like, good job. Well, whatever you decide to do, hope you do it all. You know, it's I think Newt wants a little more like cutthroatiness and less like kumbaya, but I don't know.
Did this place ever used to be really cutthroat?
Yeah, right before the podcast. Yeah, and then I remember Newt replying and saying like the podcast took away anonymity in the EWA, and when you start to get to know people and respect them, you really lose any kind of resentment that you hold towards them. Back when it was anonymous, and let's say, you know, for an example, I was Cody Rhodes and my name on the board was Cody Rhodes. So like you didn't know I was Craig. You didn't know I looked like this. You know, you and I weren't Facebook friends and all that stuff. You just knew I was Cody Rhodes. And I'm in there talking shit to you in my role plays, and then I beat you. In your head, you're going to be like, man, fuck this guy. Like, did you see all that shit he said? Like, fuck this guy. Whereas instead, now you'd be like, well, Craig's playing a heel. He's just trying to be a douche. He actually likes me. We're friends. I'm happy he won. Whereas, you know, back in the day, you'd be like, no, screw that guy. Like, screw him. And all that, you know. So the podcast kind of released anonymity and brought people to, like, I'm not blaming the podcast. Like, it's a lot of stuff. It's Facebook and social media and all that other stuff. But the podcast did usher in this, well, these are people behind these characters, and they're cool people, and like we're all friends now. So yeah, before the podcast came along and before things like social media, the place was kind of cutthroat, and people were getting pissy over stuff, and people were a lot more upset about things. But now it's a lot friendlier, and I think it's better than it was then, for sure.
Like, I have no doubts that there are people here on the Fed who probably are nicer than they would be in real life, just because the whole rest of the Fed is really nice as a result. And I have no doubt there's probably people who get annoyed when I post some really long, rambly posts about things that inconsequential or whatever. But like, it almost doesn't matter in a way because people don't go there. So yeah, like, you know, maybe it could be more cutthroat.
Okay, let's go back to like Super Brawl and the deadline posting. If this was probably pre-social media and stuff, us on Team Shamrock would have been like, no, screw those guys. This was the deadline. No one else got it. And we just would have been dicks in that thread. But, like, we know you guys and we know everyone else. And we're just like, well, we don't want to win this way. Like, that's what it's turned into. Like, well, we want to beat you, but we want to beat you at your best. Where back in the day, it would have been like, nah, these guys didn't get their role plays up. We got all ours up. That's their own fault. We win. You know
what? Like, I have no doubt that Newt would have considered just not extending the deadline at all. Like, I think, but at the same time, you've got maybe 2 or 3 teams who haven't got them all in, and you don't want to run the risk of having people kick off, because I think he did say, like, post Super Brawl is when you lose the most people normally, and I don't think we lost too many except for one obvious person, but
that's understandable too. That's a tough loss. So
but like, he's in a tricky place, Newt, where he wants to keep the rules up, because if you're not consistent with everybody, then people start slipping the net and start making up the rules themselves. And at the same time, you don't want to lose 2/3 of the Fed because, you know, they spent their whole week writing 2 role plays and a group role play. So I might have erred on the side of just ending the deadline there,
that was never going to happen, though, like you said.
No, but like, I mean, I come from an education background. I used to be a teacher, and I know you have to be consistent with when you lay down the law, so it's tricky.
Yeah, and like you said, I think more people would have quit and been butthurt about it. So, you know, he did the right thing, and at the end of the day, everyone got their role plays up, and that's what is more important to me as a competitor and as someone that, you know, wants to see everyone do their best. So
definitely, I think that's the right approach as well. Like, you don't want to be competing against 3 teams with incomplete role plays, because that just is a waste of time for everyone involved. And I think you're right to say that too.
All right, so this has been great. I hope you had fun. But last thing, let me just say congratulations once again for your tag team championship victory. I know, aside from the women's championship, this is your first major title in the EWA, and I remember getting mine, and I remember how it felt, and I know that it has to have felt pretty good. And you beat John and myself, which, we take pride in our work, and we try hard, and we don't half-ass anything. So it's a testament to you and your work that you were able to get one on us, because we felt like we did really good work, but we also felt like you did really great work too. So congratulations, man.
Well, thanks very much. I mean, it's also a testament to you and John that A, it felt as rewarding as it did, and B, that I felt as bad as I did when I beat you.
Yeah.
So it says a lot about your qualities as writers and as members of the board, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see where you go forward with the Vaudevillains. I'm excited also to see how you go forward with Gabriel. I think when we look back on this podcast, and maybe a few months down the road to 7 or 8 months down the road, it'll be kind of funny to see like how we were talking up Gabriel and Skrull, because who knows how it'll end. We don't know how it'll end right now, so it might be fun to look back on this. But this is fun. Thank you for coming on, Cuz. And
thanks for having me on.
If you guys out there are interested in being on the next EWA podcast, just send me a message on the forum. We'll get something set up. Like I said, I'd like to do these bi-weekly, but if I get some free time, I will throw one up as soon as I get a chance. I know there are a lot of people out there that haven't been able to get on the Hashpipe Report, or haven't been here for the EWA podcast, so I just want to invite you. Just come on. You don't have to video chat. You can be like Cuz and just, it's audio. I'll keep my video up here, and I'll keep stuff over here on the right, but we just want to talk to you. Want to learn about who you are, want to learn about your history, and just talk about your character. It's fun stuff. We're here to have fun, so let's let's do that on the podcast as well. For Cuz and myself, thank you for watching and listening. This has been a presentation of the EWA.